and welcome to the Huddle. Liam Santamaria here, and we're in the midst of the Preseason Coaches Series. For those just catching up, Adam Ford, John Riley, Scott Roth, all there for you to listen to. And today, we're going to speak to Simon Mitchell from the Southeast Melbourne Phoenix. They are looking to bounce back from a season outside the playoffs. So sit back, relax. Up next, Simon Mitchell. Mitch, what's happening, mate? Very good to see you.
Good to see you too, Liam. Well introduced, very professional.
I have a feeling I know why you have that big cheesy grin on your face, because the Magpies are up and about.
They're all right, aren't they? You know what? It's a tough one. I barrack for two teams in the AFL, and I'm going to apologise to the people I offend right now, but the Collingwood's actually my second favourite team.
Oh.
Yeah, and people don't know this about me. That my favourite team is whoever plays Carlton, and secondary, it's Collingwood. So this week they're both my favourite teams, Collingwood and Collingwood. But yeah, I have a distaste for Carlton, so it's been a good week.
You hate Carlton more than you love Collingwood.
79, 81, and living through the 70s and 80s. Of having to watch the 1970 grand final over and over and over again. They've brought unbelievable levels of trauma to my life. And this is just grasping a little bit back.
Well, I live with a diehard Carlton supporter. And so it's been a rough couple of days around my house. But and I'm not going to let her listen to the first part of this podcast because she quite likes you. And that's going to really ruin things.
I apologise. You've been tiptoeing around the first few days of this week then, haven't you?
I really have.
Best behaviour.
I really have. Thanks for bringing us into your home, mate. I thought you'd be in the office because you were talking about how you had practice and you had meetings and the like, but here we are in your beautiful home.
Yeah, no, we had training at Frankston today. Wednesdays is our pickup day, so we bring guys in from local associations and all around the NBL one and Big V actually. So we got guys travelling in from Bendigo and all over the place. And we didn't have access to the State Basketball Centre today because there was high school championship games going on there. So we took it to lovely oceanside village of Frankston, which is where I live. So had the coaches meeting back at my place.
Beautiful. And you were telling me just before we got started, you're looking, when you glance past the laptop right now, you're looking at ocean views out there.
Yeah, it's a wonderful little bay area there. Yeah. Beautiful Frankston, mate. What we get.
Love it. Okay, so what are you, 2 weeks, a week and a half into preseason at this point, officially getting on the floor and starting preseason? How's practice going?
Mixed bag at the moment, to be honest. You know, we've got a few guys off the floor. Creaky hasn't started up with us just yet. He's recuperating from a little bit of a foot injury. And then we're just working through next with some of our guys, making sure that they're prepared at the right time. And but the real positive for us is just bringing in some kids. Wonderful watching Junior Maduro. Been fantastic. Grant Aticevic has been awesome as well. So getting those young guys in, Owen Foxwell as a DP, just getting those guys prepared for what's ahead has been really promising. And then getting kids in from other associations, some guys, we had a really good working group. At this point, we've still got a DP position to fill, and we still have training positions that we'll maintain throughout the course of the year. So we've got guys who are competing for those spots. We've still got a roster spot as well, I should add.
You do, yeah, and we'll talk a little bit about that. It sounds a little bit like kind of preseason. Did you get the feeling like, you know what, when the imports actually arrive and we get everyone on the floor, that's when it'll really kick off?
Yeah, I think so. They arrive the first week of September, on the 1st of September, I should say.
Okay.
And that'll be 3 extra players. Creaky will be closer to getting on the floor at that stage. And you'll be able to ramp it up a little bit more. But, I mean, we go straight into a trip to Tasmania where we play a couple of games. We'll be learning each other's name during those games, let alone plays. And then we obviously start getting prepared for the Blitz. And hopefully we'll have 6 or 7 training sessions with our squad by then. And then, we'll be able to present a little bit more on the floor and try a few different things. But yeah, it's going to be a bit of a crash course this year.
You talked a little bit about Junior Maduro right then. Let's speak on him right now. Excited. We're always excited about the guys that are brand new to the league. He's coming in out of college, so he's a Rookie of the Year candidate, first year as a pro. What do you feel, in Junior Maduro?
Oh, well, firstly, Junior's a kid who's been working with us historically. Our first season, he spent the year with us training before going to college. And, we've had bits and pieces of him in between coming back from college. Wonderful athlete, good size. He's built up his strength since we last had him in the gym. Defensively tenacious, can get physical with ball handlers, and he's got the speed to get back in front. He's going to add a bit of athleticism to us in the backcourt as well. Nice to see in the scrimmage today, get an alley-oop thrown to him from Owen Foxwell, and he's chin on the rim and throw downs. So that was fantastic, which is an element of excitement we may not have had in our backcourt to this point.
Okay. All right. So before we start looking further forward and talking about the upcoming season, let's go back and work our way there. What were your and your coaching staff and management, what were your key takeaways from the end of season review?
Yeah, we actually had a lot of key takeaways. Firstly, we need to be a better communicating team. One of the things that, everyone knows our story. When we lost Ryan Brockhoff, yeah, we lose a great player, but I think the biggest impact it had was our ability to communicate. Now, Rowdy didn't get his name for being the loudest bloke, but at our team, he really is one of the great communicators, and we lost that. And we weren't able to fill a void for a number of reasons. We had too many quiet blokes, I think, in general. And then we also had some guys who had maybe they're dealing with their own issues and maybe not able to give them enough of themselves to the team and the betterment of the team. And so, that to me was the biggest flaw in our team. And I think it hurt us defensively, especially. Early in the season, we were one of the better defensive teams, and we dropped away really, really bad. From the communication standpoint, that's something we needed to rectify, number one. I think our play after timeouts, whether offense or defense, I thought we were poor. So that's something, again, comes down to communication. What's being said at timeouts, what's being said as guys walk back onto the floor. Those are things that we need to work on. We've got like a list of 7 or 8 things as well that we need to sort of get to and make sure that we get better at.
Man, those key injuries can have a massive impact. Sometimes teams find a way to work through it, like Tassie did losing Will Magnay last season. But other times it can be debilitating in a longer term sense, like what you guys experienced losing Rowdy. Sometimes in a much more shorter sense, like Melbourne United not having Chris Goulding in game 3 of a semi-final series, and they really missed what he brought to the table. But the Rowdy piece, I feel, maybe has been underspoken about in review of your season, because when he went down, you were I've got it here, 11-6. You went 4-7 from that point on. He was 3rd in your team in scoring, and he was your leading rebounder. You talked there about your communication, but his communication and what you missed there. But in a general kind of sense, when we look at the way in which the team kind of tailed off later in the season, can we just go back? Do you just go back to that point of losing Rowdy and say that was the deal breaker?
No, I don't. One, I don't think you can sort of put it down to injuries and say, oh, we were unlucky. We weren't good enough. And we spoke all through the season. If you go through the press conferences, myself and Creaky or myself and Kyle, we always talked about just scratching the surface. Even when we were 11-6, we didn't feel like we were firing on all cylinders. There was still a huge upside for us to get to. And part of that was our inability to communicate at a high enough level, at an elite level. And those are things we're still incorporating Joe Chi into the group. And there was elements of, he became more of a target, somewhat through necessity, but more of a target, and he became more comfortable in the league. I think officials maybe became more comfortable with him, although maybe not as comfortable as I'd like. And there was just elements that, as the season progressed, we were looking saying these are areas we're really going to hit. We never got there. We didn't get to that. We didn't get to it. So yeah, the injury, maybe there's a different scenario if that doesn't happen to Rowdy, and I think it's probably safe to say we would have been more successful. There's a lot of close losses in there, but it didn't eradicate the underlying issues that I felt we had as a team anyways.
You spoke about one of those things before about the defense and how it tailed away. Over the course of the 3 years now that you guys have existed as a franchise, in each one of those years as a whole, you've ended the regular season top 3 in offensive efficiency and bottom 3 in defensive efficiency. Coming into last season, you guys had a real focus on personnel in that regard. We want to get longer. We want to get more athletic. We need guys that can be more active defensively. Where do you sit now on coming into this upcoming season on the defense? I heard you guys in Vegas saying it's all about the defense for us coming in this year, because you obviously look at those numbers and say they need a change. Where's your mindset and mentality at right now about those numbers and defense moving forward?
Yes, I guess it goes back to year one and us sort of placing ourselves in the market of Melbourne. And what did we want to identify ourselves as? Well, what we didn't want to be was Melbourne United Junior. It was sort of like their poor cousin. We're just like, no, let's be something completely different. They're the dour defensive team. My role at Melbourne United was the defensive side of things. And I was like, well, here's an opportunity. And you can sort of go through the personnel that were available to us as well. And it's like, well, I feel like here's an opportunity. We could create something completely different and separate ourselves. Now, that was based upon a very fast, active offensive low with quick hits and unbelievable shooting. And that was sort of how we identified ourselves from year one. And the idea was to slowly bring the defense to the level that we thought we could be at. And we haven't got to that level just yet. And it's been slow. You could say, Tassie did the opposite. They've gone from an unbelievable, strong defensive unit, and they're going to have, I'm sure their goal is to grow their offensive side of things. Is there a right way? Is there a wrong way? We're not sure. I guess, again, we were looking at the market and say, well, how do we attract how do we brand ourselves in a market that Melbourne United had control of? So we wanted to identify ourselves a little differently, but at the end of the day, you need to defend if you want to win a championship. I thought we showed signs. I mean, you can go through season numbers and all those sorts of things, and they're important, absolutely. But I go through the season 2, and I thought we got ourselves to a point where our best defensive efforts were, amongst the elite of the league, regardless of what the season numbers were. I think early last season, some of our numbers probably reflected that as well, but it dropped away heavily. We need to build that consistency. It needs to be an element of pride. Everyone that we bring in to this organization needs to bring an element of defensive spunk with them.
One of the things I think that's really important in coaching, and tell me if I'm wrong, but is like having an appreciation for the player's experience and what they might be going through in certain situations. And one of those things we often talk about is like a guy in a contract year, and what kind of motivation that gives to them or what kind of anxiety that provides at different times. Well, you were in a contract year last season, and as the season tailed away and you guys fell out of playoff contention, was that an anxious time for you? It was a conversation bubbling around the basketball media at the time, and a bit more of a focus started to go on you and less on the team. Was it an anxious time for you, or how did you kind of deal with that and reconcile that and then embark on those conversations with management in postseason?
Yeah, I mean, myself and Tommy have a really open line of communication. There's no mystery around where I was sitting at any stage during the course of last year. I don't put a lot of thought into it, to be honest. It just doesn't matter to me because I don't control it. My anxieties and my issues and my problems and what keeps me up at night wasn't an unsigned contract. It was, how the hell are we going to beat Melbourne United this weekend? How the heck are we going to beat Tassie this weekend? What are we doing against Adelaide? Now, that's where my focus is at. So it really had no effect on me other than, I guess it's a talking point for others. But, I'm not involved in those conversations.
So it's contract year again, really, right? It's a 1-year
Yeah,
extension, and you just like it's the same kind of focus coming in.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know there's pressure to win. I mean, we want to see a team that continually gets better. What might be surprising to some people is we actually had a better winning percentage last season, in the regular season, than we did the year before. Now, we're not trying to hang our hat on anything, but if you want to deal in facts, we won a greater percentage of our games last year than the year before. It was just a more competitive season with more elite teams, and we were, unfortunately, the team that didn't make it. And we need to be better. You know, you look at all the games that we lost by single digits. It's not an overhaul that's required here. It's tweaking. And I feel like we've got the tweaks in there this year that will help us alleviate some of the issues we faced last year.
Right. Well, one of those key tweaks was you guys arrived at the decision to go with an import backcourt for the first time in Phoenix history. When and why did you come to that decision when looking at how you were going to construct this year's roster?
Yeah, well, we were always going with an import point guard. That's sort of, and we have 3 years in a row leading into this season. Gary is someone that we had a really good look at last year. There's people need to understand last year was one of those years where the ability to bring people in was like a really small marketplace for a lot of teams. And a lot of that's due to the immigration laws at the time. You couldn't bring out partners into Australia initially. People who hadn't had their shots, weren't vaccinated, couldn't come in, and so that all of a sudden starts to shrink your marketplace a little bit of like who's available. Gary was someone that we spoke to relatively late in the proceedings. He had a contract offer on the table already, and it's just the timing didn't quite work out. Now, having said that, that's not to say that we were taking Gary over Xavier at that point in time. Mm-hmm. Okay, we're still constructing the roster, but Gary was already in a position where he had a contract offer in Turkey. We got on the line, had an unbelievable conversation. Like we were rapping for an hour before I think basketball even came up. It was one of those Zoom conversations. We had to keep reloading the new Zoom conversation because you get your 1 hour. And it was just, we just got along, man.
Come on, get the subscription. Come on.
Yeah. No, so it just got to someone that I felt really comfortable with, watched him during the year, and there's just elements of his game I'm thinking, geez, we could really do with that in our roster. And so when this offseason came around, that was a bit of a no-brainer to get Gary, and that happened really quick. Our conversations were like, because even last year we were like, man, I'd like to work together sometime. Mm-hmm. And it was reciprocated. And so it was an easy transition this year. With regards to Trey Cal, I guess for us initially it was like, well, let's have a look at the marketplace, who's available, who fits in there, because you always want to go with your Australians if you can, and plug your holes with the Americans. But in incorporating plan A, B, C, and D, and all the roster scenarios, I'm going through who are potential 2 men that we could bring in. Trey was right at the top. We actually inquired about him really early and got laughed at because he's coming out of EuroLeague. There's really good money over there. But when Summer League approached, his management got back in touch with us. We had conversations. I think they've seen how guys can bounce from the NBL and get into the NBA. And he's a really high level player, obviously playing EuroLeague last year. And just a little bit more knowledge about us, our league, our team. Yanni Wetzel may have had a word to him about us as well, which helps. And yeah, just he became more comfortable and his management became more comfortable. And it was just like, man, we're going to get a player of this caliber. We've got to roll with this.
Well, so what was cool was we got to watch that process. We got to watch the conversations that you and Tommy and Mike were having in your hotel room there at Vegas as the Trey Cal thing came up and became a reality, and you followed it through and you got the deal done. Really cool feedback from that content, by the way, and people that consumed it were appreciative of you guys opening your doors like that. Was it an uncomfortable experience for you?
No, not really. To be honest, again, we're in a competitive market here in the NBL. I don't think there's anything within those conversations that make us look bad or embarrassing or, I mean, they're honest and authentic, but if there was something within that we thought, geez, can we get this out maybe? First, don't say it, but you know the camera's there, but it's just sort of, you know, I think the NBL does a great job. I think it's our, cut back. I think it's our responsibility to help grow the sport and to provide content to the media. It's not a secrets thing. I feel like we've got to grow the sport as well as, you know, grow our club.
Well, we could see through that process what you think of Trey Kell and how excited you are to have him here. I think at the time you said the quote was something along the lines of, we're finally going to have some pick and roll D. Was your comment to Tommy. Now, him combined with Gary Brown on the perimeter, you mentioned before, you said there were some elements of Gary's game that we felt would really work for us. What are they?
Oh, Gary, just his leadership for one. He's, you know, one of the things we had a lot of trouble with last year in live ball situations down the stretch of games, decision making. Are we all on the same page? Is it all being communicated correctly out on the floor? That's Gary's bread and butter. And I just feel like, I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to see our struggles in the last 2 minutes of quarters or in the last 2 minutes of a game. I mean, we're up 13 points against Illawarra with 2 minutes to play in the third quarter, and we're down at 3/4 time. I mean, these are things that Gary won't allow to happen in live play. There's all sorts of scenarios I could paint where we could have done things better down the stretch of games. And it's just, he's a clutch performer and a clutch guy and a leader. And, you know, I feel like that's going to help us go a long way. And Trey, I mean, if you watch his EuroLeague games, playing for Milan last year, an elite defender. They put him on guys and he was the shutdown guy. So you've got that element to him. But if you watch him a little earlier in the Italian season when he's playing with another club, he's the go-to guy, scoring wise, and he plays some point guard and he does a bit of this and do that. So there's so many elements to his game that I feel like, okay, if the ball doesn't get back to your point guard, and we've always been a 1-5 end of clock pick and roll team, right? I don't care. We've got a really highly capable guy with the two position who can make those decisions and plays and I think straighten us up a little bit in the late shot clock.
That's going to be big. Hey, you know, I'm a big Phoenix Suns man. Ever since 92 when Sir Charles came across, I've been riding that roller coaster ride of emotion. And for a little bit there, it involved hot sauce. Your new man in the middle, Alan Williams. Talk to us about what he's going to bring to the squad.
Well, firstly, I was a Phoenix Suns fan for about 2 minutes. Now, I'm a pretty loyal guy, but when I'm a Philadelphia 76, I think people know that. But when Charlie, as I call him, got traded to Phoenix,
you thought about it?
I did carry. Well, Sixers kind of stunk, and it's the Western Conference. I kind of made excuses for myself to watch every Phoenix Suns game and even maybe wear a Phoenix Suns hat in the playoffs. But yeah,
That's when I moved. I was a Sixer because of Sir Charles. So when I was 11 in 92, it was time to go.
Well, some of us have got a little more character, Liam. We stay with our teams. But anyways, we might be tempted, but we stay. So yeah, Alan, first saw him. I knew of him, but when I first saw him in person playing with Creaky at Long Island, he's just an elite talent. His touch is unbelievable. Ferocious rebounder. A big body, takes up space. He's not, you know, in on the rim sort of guy. He's a little different than perhaps what our job description was looking for. But he's such an elite talent, such an elite scorer, passer, high IQ, defends. He's going to be really good for us.
Why does it happen that a bunch of guys from certain GLeague teams all end up in the NBL? Like the 18-19 Long Island Nets now. That's what we got. Shannon Scott, Tajir McCall, Mitch Creek, and Big Sauce. I'm not sure if I'm missing anybody. I'm talking the 1920 Wisconsin Herd. All right, so what do we got there? We got Jalen Adams.
Yep.
DJ Hogue.
Yep.
Ray John Tucker. I think I might be missing one one more from there. And then also the Lakeland Magic there with Robert Franks and Tajir McCall. Is it the conversations that these guys have with each other when an offer comes from the NBL? They say, hey, my man's over there. I'll give him a call. And they say, dude, you need to come.
Yeah, you might have left one out there. Did Rajon and Justin Millawara play together as well at Delaware? Maybe yeah. There's a lot of guys that sort of they definitely talk to each other. When Alan Williams' name came up, and when it first came up, I kind of like, yeah, right, whatever. Who else have you got? Who else are we talking to?
Can't afford him. Can't get him.
Just okay. He's playing for in the VTB and Euro Cup, and he's been a great performer at that level. But you've got to follow through, and I had no expectations at all. But you got a man like Creaky who has mates everywhere in every corner of the earth. I was in Adelaide at the time. I went to visit Joey Wright. He had some kids he works out, and I wanted to go have a look at some of the kids he'd been working out.
Mm-hmm.
And I got on the phone. I was a Creaky. Look, been throwing a name. Don't know what if it's realistic or not, but can you put the call into Alan and just put your nose in the wind, see what you can smell. And yeah, these conversations grew, and lo and behold, next thing you know, Alan's a part of our organization, and I'm appreciative to Creaky to having these connections, but it is, it's a lot of it's word of mouth, and I'm sure with Tajir up in Cairns, he would have been wording up his former teammates and making sure that they knew, what a great lifestyle it is up there. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there's a lot of word of mouth, and that's a lot about how we get our elite players in Australia too.
Right. All right. Well, let's talk about that. You mentioned that final spot. You got one more fully contracted position to fill. I mentioned the other day on air that I get the feel and I get the sense that that's probably going to be a big body of some court to bolster the depth in the front court. When you put your nose to the free agent wind right now, what are you smelling?
I'm smelling an open mind. Look, we've got a development player position to fill as well. And I think we need a little bit of flexibility up front on our roster. But at the same time, I've got to scan the talent levels available. Is it best player available? Is it specific needs? Do we need a little support for some guys who might have nicks that are going to be ongoing? These are things that we all got to weigh up, which is why we're being patient. You have a look at what every team's doing right now, and you kind of fill the gaps on their roster as well. So you got to play the odds a little bit, like, oh well, who will be available at a certain time? Do we, you continue the conversations with agents, let them know, and be open and honest. Like, look, this is here we are, this is where we are. We've got to take our time with this. So yeah, I think it might be a big guy, but we don't know. We're not 100% certain right now.
Okay. When you do look around the other teams and their rosters and whatnot, are you seeing any kind of interesting trend on paper in terms of heading into this season? It ebbs and flows, right? Like Bogut comes into the league, everyone starts getting some big bodies to make sure that they've got someone to combat him. And as a result, the play and the way the game's played starts to change. The way it gets officiated starts to change. Are you seeing any interesting trend this off season when you look at the rosters and the depth charts?
Yeah, I think you got to have a look at the world and where the shifts and trends from a world standpoint. We got a little taste of it. I'm sure I know Perth got a little taste of it last year as well, where we were looking for bigs a little later than some other clubs in free agency, and you're watching every single guy of interest get snapped up by a Japanese team. And all of a sudden you're going down the list. What is going on over in Japan? Now in summer league, we saw that again. I think us and Perth were probably well aware of what was going to happen. It might have been an eye opener to some other clubs as well, in regards to, oh wow, what is happening up there? And it's a real threat to our league to an extent, I think. And the fact that they're down looking down at what's happening in Australia, picking off some of our local guys as well, and some of the stories and rumors you hear of, we have our Asian player rule. I hear they might have an Australian player rule. Where does that affect our clubs and whatnot? So anyways, I guess when you know what's happening there, initially I was thinking, man, we might be a 6, 8 and under league. Like I really thought this could be really a different look. And you go back to Bogan and everybody looking for the bigger bodies, and there's a little bit of that. But then you see Isaac Humphries sign with Melbourne United. You see Aaron Baines come into the league with Brisbane, and all of a sudden the size starts to kick up a little bit, which is why we've been a little bit patient as well. In how we complete our roster, because you might just need an element there that's only specialized for certain opposition. But so that's why we're being patient. The trends that you see, they flip flop a little bit, but yeah, there's certainly a lot of mobility on those front lines as compared to maybe a few years back.
All right, to finish up, man, I always like to ask this question at about this time. I posed it to you at this point ahead of last season. I'm going to give it to you again. When it's all said and done, this upcoming season, what will success look like for the Phoenix in your eyes?
Success for us is competing for a championship. We keep our standards high. Now, some people may say we build a rod for our own back by being very successful in year 2 and being close to pushing for a championship. Again, I feel like whilst we experienced some minor setbacks last year, I don't think they were of gargantuan size and nature. I think they were areas of like, okay, we learn from that, we tweak it, we get better. So we still got our eyes pretty high, but I feel like sometimes we talk about before, we want to make sure that we're helping media, we're helping grow the game. We might keep a few cards closer to our chest this year and where we see ourselves and what our aspirations are. Maybe keep a lid on things. But I think success for us is we've got our goals really, really high.
Okay, nice. Well, good luck, man. Good luck in achieving that. Good luck on Saturday afternoon at the MCG. See if you can keep things rolling there with the black and white stripes.
Yeah, go Pies. Yeah, it's I like to roll the Cats. It'd be nice. We've got a few Geelong supporters in the team. Rowdy's a Geelong supporter. Few guys training with us. Luke Rosendale from Bendigo's a Cat supporter. So it'd be nice to turn up on a Monday morning and give them a little jab in the ribs and say, "Hey, how's your team doing?"
Oh, you're such a Collingwood supporter. It's more about the pain for others than about the joy for yourself. All right. Well, hopefully you inflict, for your sake, pain on others this season and you bring joy to yourself and your fans. And I'm going to enjoy watching the journey. Thanks for the chat.
Cheers, mate. Appreciate it.